Baby girl, I know you've been walking around carrying the weight of a heartbreak that you didn't sign up for. You've been smiling in public but crying in private, pretending like the sting doesn't still burn when his name crosses your mind. You've been trying to convince yourself you're over it, but every time your phone lights up, a small part of you still hopes it's him saying, "I'm sorry." But tonight, I came to tell you something different. We're not waiting on apologies anymore. We're not waiting on explanations that never come. We're not sitting in the ashes of what broke us. Tonight, we're confusing the enemy by standing up, straightening our crown, and taking back our power. Not by fighting the way he expects, but by healing in ways he can't understand. You don't have to clap back, baby. You can come back stronger. When a man hurts you, the natural instinct is to respond from the place of the wound. It's that raw ache that says, I want him to feel what I feel. You want him to know the sleepless nights, the unanswered questions, the tears that fell on pillows no one saw. You want him to feel the same emptiness he left you with. But let me tell you something, sis. Revenge may feel powerful for a moment, but it will never give you the restoration your soul is craving. The real power, the real confusion, it comes when you heal. Because see, when he expected you to crumble, healing makes you rise. When he thought his absence would destroy you, healing makes you build. When he believed your joy depended on him, healing makes you glow in a way that makes him wonder if he ever really knew you at all. That's the confusion. That's the divine reversal. Healing is not weakness, it's warfare. It's choosing to show up for yourself when someone else stops showing up for you. Healing doesn't start in a day, and it doesn't happen because you said you're over it. Healing starts when you stop rehearsing what happened and start releasing what happened. It starts when you stop checking his social media, trying to decode if he misses you, and instead start asking yourself, why do I still need to know? Healing starts the moment you decide that his power over your emotions is expired. You get to revoke his access. You get to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. And I know it hurts to walk away from the version of you that loved him so deeply. It hurts to admit that love wasn't enough to make him stay, to make him grow, to make him see you. But baby, that hurt is holy if you let it be. That hurt is the birthplace of your transformation. You can let the pain make you bitter, or you can let it make you brand new. Healing doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means it no longer controls the narrative of who you're becoming. When you heal, you start to see differently. The red flags you once painted white now show up in their true color. You no longer chase closure from someone who doesn't even have clarity. You no longer perform for love you attracted. You stop begging people to choose you because you realize you were chosen long before they entered the room. Healing is the quiet power that doesn't need validation. It is validation. It's the sound of peace replacing the echo of pain. And let's be real. There's something about a healed woman that intimidates a man who expected to break her. He'll see you smiling again, not the forced smile, but the genuine one that comes from knowing you survived something that should have destroyed you. He'll see you glowing, not because you're trying to get his attention, but because peace looks good on you. He'll see you walking in purpose, and he'll wonder, did she ever really love me? But what he doesn't know is, yes, you did love him, but now you love yourself more. That's the confusion. You see, confusion is not about manipulation. It's about elevation. It's not about making him jealous. It's about making yourself whole. The enemy thought he could use that heartbreak to distract you, but instead God used it to develop you. The heartbreak wasn't punishment, it was positioning. You had to lose him to find you. And now, every time he tries to figure out why you're not reacting, why you're not posting subliminals, why you're not begging for closure, baby, that's you operating in divine confusion. Because you learned that silence speaks louder than chaos. You learned that peace is your loudest clapback. Healing is not glamorous. Sometimes it's tears at 2 a.m. Sometimes it's journaling the same pain over and over until the words lose power. Sometimes it's therapy sessions where you have to face the version of yourself that tolerated too much. Sometimes it's forgiving him, not because he deserves it, but because you deserve your freedom back. Healing isn't linear. Some days you'll feel unstoppable, other days you'll feel undone. But every day you show up for yourself is a victory heaven celebrates. And you know what's beautiful? Healing changes your appetite. What used to attract you no longer feeds you. The same patterns that once felt like passion now look like dysfunction. You start craving peace more than attention. You start seeing that the person who left didn't take your worth with them. They just made space for someone who could handle it. And that's when confusion really sets in, because the man who hurt you will expect to see you bitter, expect to see you broken, expect to see you blaming him. But you're too busy blooming. You're too busy growing into the woman you were always meant to be. Healing is holy work. It's saying, I refuse to let this pain define my future. It's recognizing that the same heart that was broken is still beating stronger, wiser, softer in the right places. You're not the same woman who cried over him. You've evolved. You've learned that rejection was redirection. You've learned that sometimes God removes what you wanted to protect what you needed. So confuse him. Confuse him with your joy. Confuse him with your peace. Confuse him by not answering the text that tries to pull you back into the past. Confuse him by walking with grace when you could have chosen revenge. Confuse him by thanking God for the heartbreak that led you here. Because the truth is, the woman you're becoming is the very thing he wasn't built to handle. He couldn't love you at this level. He wasn't equipped for this version of your power. You don't have to prove your healing. You just have to live it. The evidence will speak for itself. Every time you show up to your purpose, every time you pour into yourself, every time you choose peace over pettiness, heaven claps. You confuse not just him, but every spirit that thought your heartbreak would halt your destiny. Baby, you're not broken. You're being rebuilt. And as you heal, you'll realize something powerful. Forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. You can release him without returning to him. You can bless him from a distance, because forgiveness frees you. You stop carrying the weight of what he did and start carrying the wisdom of what you learned. You start thanking God, not for the pain, but for the perspective. Because now you see that sometimes God has to let something hurt you to show you how strong you really are. Healing teaches you boundaries. It teaches you discernment. It teaches you to stop explaining your worth to people who can't afford your value. It teaches you that not everyone is meant to walk with you into your next season. Some people were only assigned to the chapter that built your resilience. And when you accept that, you stop trying to resurrect connections God already buried. Confuse him with your healing, sis. Because your healing is not just about you, it's about every woman watching you rise. It's about your daughter learning that love doesn't mean losing yourself. It's about your sister realizing that heartbreak isn't the end, it's a reset. It's about your friends seeing what it looks like to walk through pain and still praise God. Your healing becomes a testimony that somebody else needs to see. And when that man, the one who thought you'd never recover, sees you thriving, let him wonder. Let him guess. Let him question how you did it, because the answer is between you and God. He doesn't need to understand the process. He just needs to witness the result. You're no longer seeking his validation because you've already been validated by the one who never left you. Your healing will confuse him because it's not the reaction he expected. It's the revelation you were destined for. You're not fighting for attention anymore. You're walking in alignment. You're not chasing closure. You're living in clarity. You're not rehearsing pain. You're releasing purpose. Healing turns your heartbreak into a harvest. It turns your tears into testimony. It turns what was meant to destroy you into the very thing that defines you. So yes, when a man hurts you, confuse him, not with games, not with pretense, but with growth. Confuse him with the calmness that comes from knowing you've outgrown the storm. Confuse him with the confidence that comes from realizing you were always the blessing, not the burden. Confuse him with the kind of grace that makes even pain bow its head in reverence. Because when you heal, you don't just recover, you reign. And that right there is the kind of confusion heaven celebrates. Redefine your worth beyond his validation. That's the lesson many of us never saw coming, the one life had to teach us in the middle of heartbreak. Because when you've loved a man who made you question your enoughness, when you've poured your soul into someone who could barely hold your heart, you start to confuse your value with how he saw you. You start believing that if he couldn't love you right, then maybe you weren't worth loving at all. But baby, I came to tell you, you were valuable before he ever saw you. You were chosen before he ever knew your name. His inability to recognize your worth does not erase it. You see, we live in a world that teaches women to measure themselves by someone else's approval. The more attention you get, the more wanted you feel, the more texts you receive, the more beautiful you believe you are, the more he stays, the more worthy you think you've become. But that's a lie from the pit, because real worth is not dependent on who notices it. It's rooted in who created it. Before he ever called you beautiful, God called you chosen. Before he ever said he loved you, God said you were fearfully and wonderfully made. His validation is optional. Your value is eternal. The dangerous thing about letting someone else define your worth is that the moment they leave, you start to crumble. You start doubting yourself, second-guessing every part of who you are. You replay the relationship in your mind, trying to figure out where you went wrong, how you could have been better, what you could have changed. But sis, your worth is not a math equation to be solved. It's not something that fluctuates with his attention. You don't become less because someone else couldn't see more. You don't become smaller because someone lacked the capacity to hold something sacred. When you redefine your worth, you stop begging people to love you, right? You stop auditioning for roles you were never meant to play. You stop shrinking yourself just to make someone else comfortable. Redefining your worth is the moment you look in the mirror and say, even if he never sees it, I know what I carry. It's the moment you realize that you don't need to be chosen by him because you were already appointed by God. It's that deep exhale where you release the need to prove, to perform, to please, because worth doesn't beg. Worth simply is. I know what it's like to love someone so deeply that you lose sight of yourself in the process. You start adapting, adjusting, overextending, all in the hope that it'll make them stay. You think if you just love harder, give more, tolerate longer, maybe then they'll see you. But here's the truth. If someone can only value you when you're convenient, it's not love, it's control. And control will always demand that you forget who you are. The moment you start redefining your worth, control loses its grip. When you stop needing validation, you start attracting connection, because validation is surface, but connection is soul. Validation wants to be seen, connection wants to be known. Validation feeds the ego, connection nourishes the heart. When you know your worth, you stop chasing what flatters you and start embracing what fulfills you. You realize you don't need a man to tell you who you are. You need one who recognizes what you already are. There's a difference between someone who completes you and someone who compliments you. Completion is God's job. Compliment is man's privilege. Sis, there's something dangerous about a woman who knows her worth. Dangerous to the enemy, dangerous to insecurity, dangerous to anyone who thought they could play with her peace. Because when you know who you are, you become unshakable. The lies don't stick. The rejection doesn't break you. The silence doesn't scare you. You stop measuring yourself against another woman's highlight reel because you understand that comparison is the thief of peace. You stop competing for attention because you realize you were never created to compete. You were created to complete the purpose God placed inside you. When a man hurts you and you start redefining your worth, something shifts in the atmosphere. You start standing taller. Your voice carries a new authority. Your steps have purpose. And even though the same situations may try to pull you back, you don't respond the same way because you've elevated your standard. What once attracted you now offends your spirit. You start saying no without guilt. You start protecting your peace like it's sacred ground. You stop explaining your value to people who can't afford your presence. That's not pride, that's power. You've got to understand that your worth was never designed to be determined by man, because man didn't create you. You were crafted by the Creator himself, molded in the image of the divine. Your worth isn't in your body, your status, or your relationship. It's in your spirit. It's in your resilience. It's in your ability to love again even after being broken. It's in your capacity to keep showing up when life tries to silence you. That's worth. That's glory wrapped in humanity. Some of us have been trying to earn love that was freely meant to flow. You don't earn what's meant for you. You align with it. You don't have to prove you're lovable. You just have to remember you are. When you redefine your worth, you start to see that the way he treated you says more about his wounds than your worth. Hurt people, but healed women learn how to stop taking responsibility for someone else's brokenness. You can acknowledge the pain without carrying the blame. You can say, that hurt me, without saying, I'm unworthy. Redefining your worth means you start healing the parts of you that believed love had to be hard. You stop confusing inconsistency for passion. You stop mistaking chaos for connection. You stop letting someone's absence convince you you're unlovable. Because worth doesn't need to chase. Worth attracts. Worth doesn't have to prove itself. It stands tall in silence. There's a story in every woman who forgot her worth for a moment, but the power is in the moment she remembered it again. That moment when she wiped her tears and said, I may have been broken, but I'm not done. That moment when she realized she could still rise from the ashes. That's the divine moment where God whispers, you are still mine. Because even when you lost yourself in someone else, God never lost sight of you. Redefining your worth also means forgiving yourself for the times you settled. Because we don't just forgive them, we forgive ourselves. For the times we ignored the red flags, for the times we called toxicity love, for the times we made excuses for behavior that broke our peace. You've got to release that guilt. You were doing your best with what you knew then. But now that you know better, you do better. Self-forgiveness is part of worth reclamation. Because how can you walk in worth while still carrying shame? When you know your worth, you start setting standards that reflect your healing, not your hurt. You stop accepting crumbs when you know you bring a whole table. You stop explaining why you require consistency. You stop apologizing for wanting depth, because high standards don't make you difficult. They make you deliberate. You're not asking for too much. You've just been asking the wrong people. There's a beauty in becoming a woman who no longer needs to be chosen to feel complete. When you sit in that space, the space where you're single but satisfied, healing but hopeful, you radiate something that can't be faked. That's when your energy shifts. That's when your glow returns. That's when you stop begging for love and start becoming love. You become the kind of woman who doesn't chase because she attracts everything aligned with her worth. Sometimes redefining your worth means being okay with walking alone for a while, because loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. Loneliness is empty. Solitude is full. In solitude, you rediscover yourself. You start to enjoy your own company again. You start hearing your own voice again, the voice that got silenced when you were busy trying to please someone else. You start rebuilding your confidence, brick by brick, until one day you realize you no longer miss what you lost. You miss who you were before you forgot your worth. A woman who has redefined her worth becomes a mirror of God's grace. Her presence speaks peace. Her silence carries strength. Her love has boundaries. She doesn't have to announce her healing. It's felt. The same people who underestimated her begin to sense the shift. They can't quite explain it, but they feel it. That divine confidence, that holy glow, that peace that doesn't make sense. Because when you redefine your worth, you redefine how the world sees you. You teach people how to treat you, not by demand, but by demonstration. And let's be real, sometimes redefining your worth will cost you relationships. Not everyone can handle a healed you. Some people were comfortable with your brokenness because it made them feel needed. They loved the version of you that didn't know her value because that version tolerated anything. But the healed version, the version that says no, the version that requires accountability, the version that demands reciprocity, she'll make the wrong people uncomfortable. And that's okay. Growth always comes with separation. Redefining your worth beyond his validation means learning how to validate yourself. You tell yourself, I am enough, even when no one else says it. You celebrate yourself when no one else claps. You affirm yourself when no one else notices the progress. You become your own cheerleader, your own encourager, your own safe space. That's not arrogance, that's alignment. Because when you start validating yourself, you stop waiting for people to see what God already declared. You are not what he did to you. You are not the sum of your heartbreak. You are not the rejection that broke you. You are not the mistake you made trying to love someone who couldn't love you back. You are a masterpiece still being molded, a testimony still being written. Every tear was watering something inside you: resilience, wisdom, discernment, power. And when you finally redefined your worth, you realized that everything you thought was a loss was really a lesson in disguise. Your worth doesn't expire because of who walked away. It doesn't diminish because someone didn't choose you. It doesn't disappear because you had to start over. Worth is your birthright. Worth is your foundation. Worth is your divine inheritance. When you stop letting a man's opinion become your mirror, you finally start seeing yourself through God's reflection. You start understanding that love from others should add to you, not define you. You are not waiting to be enough. You already are. You don't need a title, a ring, or a name attached to yours to make that true. You don't need to post your happiness to prove it's real. You don't need to defend your standards to people who settled for less. You just have to walk in it quietly, confidently, completely. Because when you redefine your worth beyond his validation, you stop living for attention and start living for alignment. You stop performing and start being. You stop chasing love and start embodying it. The truth is, when you redefine your worth, the same man who once hurt you might try to come back. He'll feel the shift. He'll notice the glow. He'll see that the woman he broke doesn't exist anymore. But what he doesn't realize is that she had to die so you could live in freedom, in fullness, in faith. Because the woman who knows her worth is the woman who can't be manipulated by sweet words or empty promises. She knows what she carries, and she protects it fiercely. That's the power of redefining your worth. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's not revenge, it's revelation. It's looking back at the woman who once begged to be loved and whispering, "We made it." It's walking into every new season knowing that your worth doesn't fluctuate with anyone's affection. It's resting in the truth that the right man won't be confused by your strength. He'll be captivated by it. He won't try to dim your light. He'll reflect it. Because when you redefine your worth beyond his validation, you become untouchable in the spirit. You move differently, you love differently, you choose differently. You start living from a place of fullness, not lack. You stop chasing love because you become love. You stop seeking validation because you are already verified by the divine. And when that truth settles in your spirit, baby, that's when you finally remember who you were before the world tried to tell you otherwise. Turn your pain into divine purpose. That's the transformation that shifts everything. the moment when what was meant to break you becomes the very thing that builds you. Because pain doesn't come to destroy you, it comes to reveal you. It comes to strip away everything you thought you needed so that what's real, what's divine, what's destined can finally rise. You see, pain is a language heaven speaks fluently. It's uncomfortable, it's raw, it's messy, but it's necessary. God doesn't waste pain. He transforms it into power when you let him. There are seasons in life when it feels like everything you loved was ripped from your hands. The relationship ends, the trust breaks, the hope you had begins to fade. You start asking God, why me? And he whispers back, because I trust you. You see, not everyone can carry certain pain and still rise. Not everyone can be crushed and still call on his name, but he saw something in you that could handle the breaking. Because purpose is born in breaking places. Diamonds are formed under pressure. Oil is pressed from the olive. Glory is revealed through suffering. When that man hurt you, you thought it was just heartbreak, but God saw harvest. He saw a woman who would learn how to fight for her peace, how to trust her intuition, how to depend on divine strength when human love failed her. He saw a warrior being birthed from the ashes of disappointment. He saw your tears watering the soil of a new season. And even when you couldn't see it, even when all you could feel was pain, heaven was aligning your pieces for purpose. Because pain is often God's way of pushing you into places comfort never would. Turning your pain into divine purpose starts with surrender. It starts with the moment you stop asking why and start asking what now. Because the truth is, some pain won't make sense until you've walked far enough away from it to see the pattern. You'll look back and realize that the heartbreak that hurt the most was the thing that set you free. You'll realize that the rejection that felt like punishment was actually protection. You'll realize that God wasn't ignoring your prayers, he was redirecting them. What you thought was the end was really a reroute. But purpose doesn't come dressed in comfort. It comes dressed in challenge. It comes wrapped in tears and uncertainty in moments when you feel like you've lost everything familiar. Because before God elevates you, he exposes you to yourself. Pain shows you where you still need healing. It shows you where your identity was rooted in something unstable. It reveals where you've been settling for less than divine. And once you see it, you can unsee it. That's when the transformation begins. There's something sacred about a woman who has walked through pain and chosen purpose instead of pity. She carries an authority that can't be faked. You can hear it in her voice, feel it in her presence, see it in her resilience. She doesn't need to prove anything because her scars already speak. Scars don't mean you're damaged. They mean you survived. They mean you healed. They mean what tried to end you didn't win. And when you start embracing those scars as symbols of your story instead of signs of your shame, that's when pain turns into purpose. Pain teaches empathy. It gives you eyes to see others differently. It softens your heart in places pride once hardened it. You begin to understand other people's wounds because you've walked with your own. You begin to show grace in moments where before you might have shown judgment. Pain expands your capacity to love without losing discernment. It teaches you the difference between compassion and codependency. It teaches you to love deeply but wisely, freely but with boundaries. That's divine wisdom birthed from divine pain. Sometimes your purpose will be found in the very thing that broke you. Maybe the heartbreak taught you how to help other women heal. Maybe the betrayal awakened a calling in you to teach boundaries. Maybe the rejection pushed you into your purpose because it forced you to depend on God in ways you never had before. That's why the enemy tried to bury you in that pain, because he saw what it could become. But God, in his infinite grace, always resurrects what the enemy tries to ruin. There's a moment that happens in every woman's healing journey, a shift. It's the moment you stop crying over what happened and start asking, what can I create from this? That's the divine pivot. That's the holy shift, because the same fire that once burned you can be used to refine you. The same storm that knocked you down can become the wind beneath your wings. When you decide that your pain will not be wasted, you begin to see it differently. It stops being your weakness and becomes your weapon. You don't have to have it all figured out to turn your pain into purpose. All you have to do is take the first step. Maybe it's writing your story. Maybe it's starting that business, launching that ministry, or mentoring another woman who's where you once were. Purpose doesn't always start with a platform. Sometimes it starts with a whisper. It starts in the quiet space where God says, use what hurt you to help someone else heal. And that's when you realize your pain wasn't pointless, it was preparation. Pain gives birth to authenticity. It strips away performance and leaves only truth. After you've been broken, you don't have the energy to pretend anymore. You don't have time for shallow conversations or surface relationships. You crave depth. You crave connection. You crave meaning. And that craving becomes your compass toward purpose, because God uses pain to align you with your assignment. Every tear, every disappointment, every sleepless night, none of it was wasted. When you start living in purpose, you stop seeking revenge, because you realize that your healing is the ultimate response. Your growth is the loudest testimony. Your peace is the greatest evidence that God can redeem anything. You stop needing closure because purpose gives you clarity. You stop chasing explanations because purpose gives you understanding. You begin to see how all the fragments of your story fit together, how what once broke you now blesses others. Purpose doesn't mean you don't still feel the pain sometimes. It means you've decided to let the pain serve you instead of enslave you. It means you've decided to find meaning in the mess, to pull wisdom from the wound, to find glory in the grief. Pain gives you depth. It teaches you endurance. It builds your faith in ways comfort never could. When you've seen God meet you in your brokenness, you carry a confidence that can't be shaken, because you know now, even in pain, He's present. Turning pain into purpose means letting go of the need to control the narrative. It's allowing God to use your story, even the parts they're still healing from. It's saying, God, I don't understand it, but I trust that you'll use it, because He will. He'll take the tears you cried in secret and turn them into testimonies that set others free. He'll take the heartbreak that silenced you and use your voice to help another woman find hers. He'll take what the enemy meant for evil and use it for good. That's divine reversal. That's holy redemption. Sometimes purpose will find you when you least expect it. You'll be doing something simple, encouraging a friend, volunteering, sharing your story, and suddenly realize this is it. This is what I was made to do. That moment is divine alignment. It's God showing you that nothing you went through was random. Every heartbreak, every betrayal, every lonely night had a purpose. You were being prepared for this very moment, the moment you rise. The beauty of divine purpose is that it doesn't erase the pain, it redeems it. You can look back and still feel the sting, but now it's mixed with gratitude, gratitude that you made it through. Gratitude that you found meaning. Gratitude that you didn't give up when giving up would have been easier. That's the kind of power that confuses the enemy. When you can worship from a wounded place, when you can praise through pain, when you can smile even while the scars still ache, because you understand now that the pain was never punishment, it was placement. Purpose changes the way you see yourself. You no longer view yourself as a victim. You see yourself as victorious. You no longer tell the story from a place of bitterness, but from a place of breakthrough. You start realizing that your pain didn't break you. It built the woman who's now walking in purpose. You begin to thank God, not just for what He gave you, but for what He took away. Because now you understand that everything you lost was making room for everything you were meant to become. Pain also has a way of revealing your gifts. Some of the most powerful voices, leaders, and healers were once the most broken. That's because pain gives you access to a level of compassion that can't be taught. It gives you insight that can't be read in books. It gives you an anointing that only comes through crushing. You don't just speak from knowledge, you speak from experience, and that makes your words healing. That's why your story matters. That's why you can't stay silent. Someone is waiting on the other side of your obedience. When you start walking in purpose, you realize you're not defined by what happened to you. You're defined by what you did with it. You took pain and made it purposeful. You took heartbreak and turned it into healing. You took rejection and turned it into redirection. You took what was meant to destroy you and turned it into destiny. That's power. That's transformation. That's divine partnership with God. And I know sometimes it still hurts to think about what you went through. Sometimes you still have moments where the memories sting. That's okay. Healing doesn't erase the past, it redeems it. It means you can look at what happened without letting it control you. You can acknowledge the pain without being imprisoned by it. You can carry the lesson without carrying the weight. That's what it means to turn pain into purpose. You stop being chained to the story and start walking in the strength it gave you. Every time you choose peace over revenge, every time you choose growth over bitterness, every time you use your story to help someone else, you're turning pain into purpose. You're partnering with heaven. You're rewriting the narrative. You're showing the world that a broken woman can still build something beautiful, that heartbreak didn't destroy you, it developed you. It taught you who you are, what you deserve, and what you're called to do. And here's the truth. When you turn pain into purpose, you become unstoppable. Because what can hurt you when you've already learned how to turn hurt into harvest? What can break you when you've already been broken and built back stronger? What can silence you when your voice has already found its power in the midst of pain? Nothing. That's the kind of strength that makes heaven proud and hell nervous. That's the kind of strength that changes lives. Pain will always visit, but it doesn't have to stay. You can let it pass through you and leave purpose behind. You can decide that what happened to you will not define you, but refine you. You can look at the ashes and say, there's still beauty here. Because there is. There always was. You just had to go through the breaking to see it. You had to lose what you thought you wanted to discover what you truly needed. That's the divine exchange. Pain for purpose, tears for testimony, grief for growth. And it's available to you right now, not after the pain disappears, not after everything makes sense, but right now in the middle of it. That's where purpose begins. In the messy middle, in the quiet surrender, in the sacred decision to let God make something holy out of what hurt you, because He will every single time.